Turtle Beach has got two new accessories for PC gamers, the Vulcan 2 TKL, which I'll cover in a different video, and also the Burst 2 Pro. This is what we're reviewing today. They did send me both devices so I can review it for you guys, so thank you, Turtle Beach. Now, that has no impact on my opinions, no money changed hands. It has up to 8K polling rate, a 30K sensor, and a bunch of other things which we'll cover, but first, let's look at what's in the box. The mouse, a Type-C to Type-A cable, which is braided, an adapter for USB-A to USB-C, your 8K dongle, the manual, some grip tape, replacement skates, but it comes pre-installed with a set already, and then you also have a full set here if you'd prefer to have something wide, completely wide at the top and bottom. It retails for 140 USD and it's available both in black and white, and those are the dimensions on screen. According to Turtle Beach's information, this is designed for medium hands, which I so happen to be, and for claw grippers, which I also happen to be. And like we mentioned, you have an up to 30K sensor, which is going to be blazingly fast. I mean, you probably don't want to use that except if you drastically reduce the sensitivity in your games, so you'll have more data on your sensor at the bottom. You can adjust that with the software, which we'll talk a little bit about later during the video, but you can adjust it between 50 up to 30,000 DPI. It has a solid but soft, quite smooth actually, shell. That's why I'm super happy that they include grip tape. I don't really get sweaty hands, but if you do get sweaty hands, you will definitely want to use the grip tape with this one because it's quite a soft shell. I mean, it still has a little bit of sheen that gives you just a little bit of grip. If you're playing competitive and high tension kind of scenarios, yeah, you'll probably want to use the grip tape with this one. And another great thing about it is that it's very, very light at 57 gram. It is an incredibly light mouse, so if you play a lot of shooters, oftentimes on the right pad, which, you know, this is just more for aesthetics, on the right pad, if you have something that is speed, you know, a lightweight like that is probably going to be really nice. And with the ability to change the skates with what they offered, or if you buy some third-party market ones, you know, you could also go for a control mouse pad if you want something that is also very precise, or what I personally go for, a mix of the two. This is my first time having a mouse with those switches. I usually rock, just for reference, that's what I usually rock on a daily, so that was my big point of comparison, and it's the only other 8K mouse that I have, so that's what I've been using for about a year and a half. And when looking at this one, the switches, they're called Titan Optical for up to 100 million click lifespan, and I like the feel. I'm not as much a fan of the sound, which let's go ahead and have a little bit of a quick audio. If you arch your fingers, which I do a lot, they still feel nice, but if you're like very, very close, you do lose a little bit of the clickability, if we can call it that. So maybe something to keep in mind. They are not really raised a whole lot, and they don't have a whole lot of travel. You don't want to be too close to the bottom of the button, rather you want to be at the edge. The more the edge, the more satisfying those buttons are going to feel. As I mentioned a moment ago, this can go up to 8,000 hertz polling rate. Very important in the marketing, they say 0.125 milliseconds latency, which it is true. If we are calculating what 8K polling rate means, that means that every 0.125 milliseconds, the mouse will send a signal. Now, when it comes to the actual latency of your mouse, it's not quite that number, but to be fair, this is not something on Turtle Beach. This is something on all manufacturer. They always make that correlation based off of polling rate, when in fact, latency is a completely different thing, and I'll have numbers by the end of this video. It goes up to 40 hours at 8K using the dongle. Of course, if you use it wired, that's not an issue. If you use it Bluetooth, you won't be getting 8K. You will be getting less, and approximately up to 165 hours. So if you want the top performance from that mouse, make sure to either use it wired or use it using the dongle so that you can have the highest polling rate. It goes without saying, polling rate is also going to come across a lot better if you have a high refresh rate monitor, if you have strong components on your PC, because all these things are essentially an overload of data. Even though it's super small little data, it's still a lot every second. 8,000 times on top of all the different operations that your PC needs to make. So you do need to have a rig to take full leverage of those kinds of devices. When charging, we're looking at approximately 3 hours and 40 minutes from empty to full via the cable. When it comes to software, which is the Swarm 2, if you have other Turtle Beach devices, the Swarm 2 is something that they use for their headsets, for their keyboards, and also their mouse. That's going to work as one hub to control all your different devices. You have different profiles, and that'll bring you to the Windows settings, that little top right icon. You can address your DPI, and of course you have settings that you can adjust by touching that little button off to the side based off of what you want to set it at. You can see your battery status here, if your drivers are up to date, and if your connection is transmitter or wired. It now shows the mouse being connected through USB. So here you can address your notifications. Motion sync will sync the intervals between the mouse to the PC, so it gives you basically a high responsiveness. This is something you can deactivate if you find that somehow it's hurting the resources of your PC, which I guess would operate as kind of a buffer for your mouse to be able to achieve the higher pulling rate. Pulling rate, you can address it here. They give you an option between 1K, 2K, 4K, and 8K. Of course, I'm going to leave it at 8. Lift off distance. So if you have a habit of lifting up your mouse, which if you play shooters, it's almost guaranteed that you do, you can adjust it, and you can also go custom if you want. And you can do a calibration, which I find is nice because basically they're gonna measure up for you. The angle tune will essentially force you a little more into angles. I don't use those kinds of features. I want my mouse to be as one-to-one as possible, but you know, it's nice that it's there. You have debounce time, and this could be used if you're playing a game where you find that the way that you're using your mouse, you're getting false signals. You could adjust the timings on that. I'd just leave it at default, but yeah, that's something that is also available. You have angle snapping, which again is just what I consider to be a more aggressive angle tune. Personally, that is not something I use. You can have it stand by after a certain amount of time. Also, whenever you stop moving your mouse, your sensor stops almost immediately. I want to say after about a second. I took a quick video of this, but yeah, this is something that will also happen for your mouse to not deplete if you're not using it, or at least as little as possible. And of course, beyond that, you can address your buttons and what they do, and they'll let you adjust the wheel scrolling up, wheel scrolling down, wheel click. Of course, you'll be able to adjust your two buttons. The one that you cannot adjust is your DPI. I know sometimes people use that as a third button when the mouse allows for that. This is not the case here, but you do have something called an easy shift. It's a button that whenever you hold, it will modify your other keys. So for example, if I make the bottom side button as my easy shift modifier, right? So just clicking here, it's gonna easy shift for my mouse. But if you do all devices and you have other devices from Turtle Beach that supports that feature, that could also be used to change it on something like a keyboard as well as your mouse. So that's a cool touch. And easy shift, you're essentially giving new values to your keys. So you can make it so that the left click, for example, is Control C and the right click is Control V. And whenever you hold easy shift and you click left and click right, it's gonna do the other feature. Now you have a bunch of other things that you could do. You can do macros, DPI shift, you can do one Windows functions. You know, that's pretty typical nowadays of a mice to be able to have all those features. This is no exception here. You have everything you could potentially need. Personally, I just like to put it back to the default, so that's what I'm gonna do. And then last but not least, you can adjust your app settings. In terms of specs, also has NVIDIA Reflex compatibility for a sub 25 milliseconds response time, and through my test it's much faster than that, but you know, it's nice to know that they are working with NVIDIA to make sure that this offers the best reliability possible. And so let's talk about my impressions while gaming. For the last 40 something days, my main game has been Destiny Rising. I've been playing this like a madman. I've been spending a lot of time in this game. This is the shooter of the moment for me. Going from the Beast X to the Turtle Beach Burst 2 Pro, it's been a pretty natural transition. It does have a little bit of a tall bump in the back, so if you like a bump, which I actually preferred. And the Beast Max was definitely different. It has more of a Razer Viper kind of shape. So going back to what I'm currently using, which is more like one of my favorite mouses of all times, which was the MM710 from Cooler Master, if I recall. I may get the names wrong, but anyways, all that to say that it has that kind of bump in the back. And for a claw, it's kind of a resting spot for my hand. And I know some people don't like that. For me, I find it gives me just a little bit more control. So for the most part, it's been a very, very positive experience. And I just keep going back to the value, which is going to be something I address in the conclusion. I do think Turtle Beach is reaching a pretty satisfying point in terms of what it offers and how much it costs for what you get. I think they really did a great job overall. So that's something I'm quite pleased with. But if we just go back to the basics, the important things, the side buttons work really well. I like the positioning. If anything, the DPI button is probably a little far. So if this is something you use a lot, of course, you could always remap your buttons to do that as well. But if this is something that you know you use a lot on the mouse, just know that it is a little far. And right now, as I'm playing with the footage that I'm capturing, I have installed the grip tape on the mouse that comes included in the box. And it does feel really, really good. I kind of wish they would have included a little piece for the side buttons. I know some people like to add grip to these buttons as well. If they did include it, I probably would have installed them, but you know, they're not as slippery as the rest of the mouse, so I don't think it's as necessary, but it would have been just a nice little detail to add. What else could I add? Quite frankly, it's been a very, very positive experience as a whole. I can't really find anything to fault it for, minus the sound of the Switch. Again, they feel really, really good. They don't have as pleasant a sound in comparison to what I've been using for the last year or so, but it's not to the point that I would favor that over something that works better, that performs better in terms of just the latency, which granted the difference is not a whole lot, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but that's another area where this mouse shines. It would be a little crazy of me to say that I can feel that 2 milliseconds little difference that you get on average versus what I was using before. But you know, it's still nice to be able to see the numbers and know that it performs better in that aspect as well. Now, talking about performance, I tested both dongle and wired. I didn't test Bluetooth, even though the Beast X doesn't even have Bluetooth. The Turtle Beach does, so that's another advantage if you want to use that mode. But really, unless you're traveling, this is probably a mode I would not use as a whole. In fact, I don't even know how to pair the Bluetooth mode, because I know I'm not going to be using that at all. Like I'm going to stick to dongle or wired for me personally. That's where it happens, so that's why I didn't benchmark it. But as you can see, it provided better latency as well in comparison to the other 8K polling rate mouse that I had to compare it with. So that's another area where Turtle Beach shine, and that the numbers you're seeing on screen are each modes. I did 5 tests using the Prometheus 82, and yeah, the Turtle Beach won every time, and it was extremely close between each tests. Same goes for the Beast Max, so very consistent, very reliable as a whole. And so let's move towards the conclusion. To conclude, I'm really happy with the Burst 2 Pro. I believe the value to be absolutely good and the software to also really be nice as well. I feel like to have a comparable mouse of that quality, if you're to go with popular brands like, for example, Razer and Logitech, you're gonna pay considerably more, at least a 50% more. So the value is definitely one of the strong aspects here. But if you are to compare to a company like Pulsar, it's, I'd say, maybe a little more expensive, but not so much that I would completely dismiss it. And then it has a lot going for it. The 8K polling rate, you do have super light approach, and it comes with accessories. Because of that in particular, I'd say that the price is much closer, as you could believe, to something like a Pulsar. So overall, super happy and easily a product I would recommend. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is such an aggressive market that there are for sure other options that could suit you absolutely fine. What I'm saying here is that if you do go for the Burst 2 Pro, I don't see how you'd be disappointed. You have everything in the box to make it the mouse that you could ever want it to be, and you have a software to hold it up. I would easily recommend. And so let me know if you have any questions in the comment box. As always, consider hitting the like if you enjoyed this video, and to subscribe to not miss any future ones. My name is Clef. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.